So we're here outside the Sunset Cemetery in Sunset, Arizona. Sunset is a small town that used to be here, and in January of 1876, Brigham Young of the Mormons decided he was going to start a new community along here. And so about 200 members from Utah left their homes with 10 days notice and traveled here to the desert of Arizona. Most of the headstones that are in here are of children who died during their 12 years or so that they were here. And I'm just going to go in here through the gate. There is a big monument here. It marks the cemetery and the vicinity of the site of Sunset. There was actually a Fort Sunset here at one point, and on the marker outside was listed the names of all of the families. And here is kind of a directory of the people who are buried here in this cemetery. There are only about a dozen graves, many of them of children. And so I'm just going to pan down here now. This one here is Gad Morris. He was a little bit older when he died. This flat stone here is a daughter who died. She was only about a year old. And these are the other headstones that are here. It's pretty interesting, you know. Whenever we are driving along and I pass a sign that says cemetery, I always check to see if maybe it might be an older cemetery. And my husband hates to hear that word. I'll say, "Oh, look, a cemetery." You know, some people, when I tell them, they ask me, "Well, what did you do on your vacation?" And I say, "Well, I went to a cemetery, and you should see some of the stories I saw there." And they say, "Well, how can you see stories in a cemetery?" Well, you know, every one of these headstones here is a life forever changed. I'm not talking about the person who died. I am talking about the families who were left behind. And there is so much sadness, especially when it's children who die. I mean, my heart just really goes out to these parents who would have had to bury their child in what seems like such a desolate place. And yet we know, by the grace of God, that this is not the end. That this is just that jumping off point for being with the Lord. Here's one, see, a little boy who's just over a year old, for example. And his parents are not buried here. They left when the rest of the settlers left, and they would be buried somewhere else now. But I just give thanks and praise to God that He has provided through His Son Jesus that this mortal life is not the end of our lives here, and that we choose to be with Him in eternity. And so while it is tough to see these headstones, knowing that lives were changed forever, so much grief, you know, these headstones say in memory of, erected to the memory of. And yet, if we're not written in the Lamb's Book of Life, then it doesn't really matter how many headstones we have with our names on them. That, I guess, is the reason why I like to visit cemeteries. I see the stories. I feel the heartbreak of the families. I've seen cemeteries where the wife is there and the child who died maybe a few days later after the wife died. I see the cemeteries where there are 5 or 6 children buried, all under the age of 1 year old. And those are their stories. But the better story is, are we with Jesus?